We're back to Neil Haley Show. And my guest today is Steve Wright, former Cowboy, former Raider, and former Survivor and best-selling author. Steve, thanks. Aggressively Human. Steve, great to have you back on. But I'm going to talk about America's team, which I'm dreading to talk about America's team just because I'm a Steeler fan. And, you know, the Steelers did have the best of the Cowboys, those 4 Super Bowls when I was a young lad. But I mean, the Cowboys in so general, why do you think they're America's team? You think, why Dallas? Why not the Washington, whatever there are now, right?
No,
Yeah.
it's a great question. I think it's just kind of the all-American look of the star. Just the Dallas, they're such rabid fans. It was an amazing team to start my career off with in 1981 with Coach Tom Landry, who was a legend during his time. So started with him, and all other coaches had to. No one else quite reached up to his level. It was an awesome start to my career.
Yeah, and you talk about America's team. Do you think it's what kind of, I guess, people just took on the Cowboys as America's team? Is it because of the stories of the players? Because you were there at about that time when they became America's team, right?
Yeah, a little before that, they had won the Super Bowl. And then again, just the blonde-haired cheerleaders. I think they had they had the cheerleaders that everybody, all the young girls wanted to emulate. All the other football teams wanted to emulate. They had so many great stars, from Tony Dorsett to Drew Pearson. I grew up fantasizing to play with the Dallas Cowboys. That's like every other kid did.
So it's the cheerleaders, it's the facilities. So let's talk about how they really saw the facilities. Who was the ownership at that time of the Cowboys before the days of Jerry Jones? We know how he was.
I can remember it's Clint Murchison. He owned the team back in my day, and it was just Dallas was big. The show Dallas was going on, which everybody was watching. It was a lot of flash, a lot of money. It was the hottest, I think, employment place pretty much on the planet at the time. Money was everywhere, and the Cowboys were kicking butt. My first year, we were 12-4 and just missed the Super Bowl by 40 seconds when Dwight Clark made the catch. But they just surrounded themselves with the best. Mike Ditka was my special teams coach and the tight end coach, and then he went on to the Bears. And they had the first doctor of physiology in the NFL working as our conditioning coach, Dr. Bob Ward. And then he'd bring in people like Don, I think his name was Dan Inosanto, who was Bruce Lee's partner.
Oh, wow.
So he taught all the offensive and defensive linemen hand-to-hand combat, slaps and grabs and pushes and trips and kicks. And yeah, it was an awesome experience. Then they had, I think the first team to really use the deprivation tanks, where we would get inside in the floating water, the salt water, and float in blackness. And then you'd lay on your back, and they'd have a VHS tape. And so we could watch the game we're going to be playing next, the team we're playing next, and just way ahead of their time with every aspect of their training.
So you think about, I'm going to go Steelers, Cowboys. Here's the reason why, because that's all I know about the Cowboys, pretty much. I mean, I know a lot of the Steelers, but the things that every time leading up to the Super Bowl, I was a really young kid, but I'm remembering the storylines at that time. Is that, blue collar Pittsburgh Steelers, Cowboys, they were just at a different level. Like, Hollywood Henderson, you think of all the different stories of different people at that time with the Cowboys that, you said about the training, the facility, Pittsburgh Steelers, blue collar. We're not going to be putting up with all this stuff that the Cowboys do with the glitz and glamour and everything. That was pretty much it. You said your locker room was kind of that way, right? Like real.
It was, and look, it works for everybody. It certainly worked for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just iron work and tough, blue collar, smash you in the mouth, having Jack Lambert missing his 2 front teeth, the Count Dracula look, standing over the middle, and Mean Joe Green, and yeah, it was just that was some really good football. And I hate to sound like an old guy, but football is just not quite the same anymore to me. It's, I think there's been 50 new penalties brought on just since
Right.
2000, just really containing the play and making sure everybody's okay and you can't slam somebody. And
Right.
I don't know, I'm a little old school. I like to see a little more slamming going on, but yeah, Steelers were great. Everybody's got their time. Raiders had their time, and they are just struggling bad. Yeah, it's just like the Steelers, the
Yeah. So
Cowboys.
let's go to Tom Landry's hat. What the heck's up with Landry's hat? Right. That was he back in the time still that he should have been in the time of the first Super Bowl in a way with his hat and everything and how
Yeah,
he conducted
yeah,
himself.
yeah. It was always cool, calm, and collected. You never saw him raise his voice. Never heard him raise his voice. And we were required back then to always wear a coat and tie on the plane, even if you were at night, 10 o'clock in your hotel room the night before, and you wanted to go get a bucket of ice down the hall, you had to put your shirt and tie on to walk down the hall. Everything was prim and proper and gentlemanly and courteous. And yeah, it was a whole nother world.
Do you think that's why the quarterbacks of the Cowboys at that time were so much like Landry? In a way, like you could look at Danny White, then you look at before that Roger Staubach, you look at those specific kind of quarterbacks that they were very respectful, very humble compared to like other like Bradshaw. That was not Bradshaw.
Yeah, painting outside the lines just wouldn't make it with the Cowboys. We had some flashy guys like Butch Johnson doing the dances in the end zone, but other than that, no, you just did your job like Dorsett and flip the ball to the referee and jog back to the sidelines. It was just there wasn't a lot of flash. It was just get the job done efficiently. And I think you could see that the Cowboys were an efficient team, and that's why Landry ran practices and meetings and everything else. It was a business.
And where did Landry get that from? It's a business, especially at that time. Football was not the value. The contracts were definitely not there, and I'm sure the coaches weren't making the money they're making now.
I think he was. I believe he was an assistant at some point under Lombardi, and some of the other old guys where Lombardi would start off every year at training camp. This is a football, and these guys have been playing. They've been on the team for 5 years or whatever, coming on. This is a football, and I want you to stance like this and just break it down and simplify it. And this is when it's going to be done. A little different.
Now we're seeing coaches in a different aspect. Now, if we thought college coaches could continue to be the college coaches like to yesterday's NFL coaches. Now NFL coaches can't be like yesterday's NFL coaches because the game is so different. We're starting to see that in college as well, and that could be something to discuss because of the players getting paid in college. How you're seeing college coaches have to be different than they were. These hard-nosed type coaches are disappearing off the college face. What did you learn from Tom Landry? That we talk about specifically life lessons. What do you think you learned from Coach Landry?
Let's see. Well, one thing I'd like to hit on is just where you're coming from. And I couldn't imagine being a coach this day and age with the salaries these guys are making and the attitudes. And, these guys are bigger than the coach. So that would just be a nightmare. But Landry actually, he had quite a pool of coaches come out under him that all really kind of taught the same way, except for Mike Ditka was, crazy on the sidelines, but he was always that way. What I just learned from him was do your job, not a lot of flash. Let your actions speak more than your words. Be a gentleman. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, I guess, and you learned so much from these different coaches and things like that. And Mike Ditka, I'm a huge Ditka fan because of Pitt, but also because Ditka is just the Bears. To see him develop and then become the coach of the Bears, that must have been nice, right? Because you build those relationships with the assistant coaches sometimes more than the head coach, right?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to track down Mike Ditka now. I think he's in Florida. He was in Chicago there for a long time after he retired and had his restaurant there. But I speak about him quite a bit in my book, bring him up probably in 3 or 4 different chapters, and just what a mentor he was to me and different things he taught me. And so I'm trying to track him down just to get him a copy and thank him. And same with Art Shell.
Really? See, Ditko, I might have a connect to that. So it's interesting you bring up these kind of situations. I was almost where they do certain things for certain retired players. Like I had Billy White Shoes Johnson on my show with
Right.
an organization that was working with it in Vegas. I got to think of what organization that is, but go figure we have these conversations on a podcast radio show, but I can roll with the punches. So thinking about facilities, thinking of the Cowboys today, do you think that they still look at all those things that were learned from those days you were a Cowboy to how the Cowboys operate today in a way that they can still continue to sell out, even though they don't win all the time? They continue to have a brand that is the brand that is for Thanksgiving us every Thanksgiving that
I think we would all say that, but I think Jerry Jones would say it's all him. This is something I built, and he actually did too. He's so hands on. It's got to be a nightmare. A little bit. Al Davis was the same way. Al was at every practice, and that he built that mentality of just beat the snot out of each other and beating on the coaches too. He would call. I lived in the same building as him when I was with the Raiders in Marina Del Rey, and he was up till 3-4 o'clock in the morning watching practice film from the day before and call his coaches at 2-3 o'clock in the morning and ask them about, what's Wright doing stepping right instead of left, and, just little crazy things. But, that's how meticulous, and he just lived football. I always joked about how Al Davis, he hated talking about football, but he loved talking about smash mouth dominating football. They were completely different topics. But yeah.
Well, now, Jerry Jones, did you ever meet Jerry Jones?
I haven't. I haven't. And I'm not sure if I'd like to, but he just, he's got an ego beyond an ego. But yeah, he's built an amazing empire there.
No reunions with the Cowboys at that time you played? You've not had a reunion with the Cowboys the time you played with them?
Never been called back once since 1983 when I left, which is, it's kind of weird. It's kind of sad. I've been called back once to Indianapolis for the 40th reunion of the Baltimore Colts to moving to Indianapolis, which I was a part of. But I've been called every single year since I left in 1994 with the Raiders, and been flown back. They take care of the flights, our hotels, the food, the entertainment, the Napa Valley bus tours. It's just remarkable. My wife and I just came back from there, we were just back there just this last week, and it's just a great experience up there doing some book signings, and they had me walking around in the suites playing ambassador. Just appreciating, thanking everybody that was in the suites, just supporting the Raiders. And
that's interesting stuff. Why? We'll have to shout out to the Cowboys, especially I was in Dallas for 2 years. What's up? They got to contact Steve Wright, have him out in Dallas for something. Maybe a speaking engagement of some sort, so that you can get that reunion together. There's some amazing players you played with in '83, the year that you lost to Dwight Clark and Joe Montana and the 49ers. I mean, maybe they just want to forget that year. Who knows?
Right. Even the guy who was playing right guard for the longest run in NFL history for the Cowboys, I have not been called back.
Oh my! Have you talked to Tony Dorsett lately? Anything?
Sure. I talked to him. This last summer when I was writing the book. We talked a few times. He's great. He was just chilling at home and happy to endorse my book, and we had some good laughs about that play and that game and night. And it was, he's just such a great soul and quiet, and just a beautiful man.
All right. Best place to go is wrightauthor.com. Check out or purchase the book on Amazon. Aggressively Human, but it's great to talk Cowboys. And I guess that's because, so I guess you root for not just the Raiders, but the Cowboys every week too.
Yeah, and I think the Raiders are they're kind of slipping again this year. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. So yeah, I'll shift a little bit and go over to the Cowboys and jump on their bandwagon. From here out.
It depends on their schedule. That's the whole thing. This unbalanced schedule, that might be the only reason, because that NFC East is turning into a pretty juggernaut, even with the Giants and that young quarterback. Well, I'm friends with the agent of that quarterback, and I can't get back with the agent to talk to him about collaborations because he's shocked how great he's doing this year.
Yeah,
So who knows where these opportunities come from everywhere. I'm talking to everybody. I just got to get out of my studio and to see you guys, but I appreciate it. Again, wrightauthor.com. Appreciate it, Steve, and look forward to chatting with you again.
Thanks, Neil.
All right, you're listening and watching the Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.